The laugh was soft at first, almost playful, but it cut through me sharper than any scream. "My God, Lena," he said, leaning back in his leather chair, a smirk tugging at his lips. "You'll never be as good as your brother." The words hung between us, heavy and familiar, like a song I'd spent my whole life trying to forget. I looked at him. Daniel Moore, my husband of 7 years, still dressed in his crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled halfway up his forearms. The faint glow from the city lights spilled through our penthouse window, washing his face in gold. He looked calm, proud, almost amused. I smiled, not because it was funny, but because I'd learned that silence sometimes hurts more than words. He didn't notice the way my hand tightened around the wine glass, or how my reflection in the window stared back at me, poised, polished, but empty. Outside, New York glittered like it was mocking me. Inside, the air felt too still, too tight. He laughed again, that low, condescending chuckle that used to make me flinch years ago. Only this time I didn't flinch. I stood up slowly, my heels clicking against the marble floor. My pulse was calm, too calm. If he thought I'd break again, he didn't know me anymore. I turned toward him, meeting his smug grin with a steady gaze. "Then tell him to—" I paused, the rest of the sentence burning on my tongue, a promise, not a threat. That was the night everything began to unravel, the night I stopped being someone's shadow. It's strange how a single sentence can take you years back, how one careless laugh can reopen every scar you thought had healed. Because when Daniel said those words, all I could hear was my father's voice. "Be more like Ryan, Lena. He doesn't give up so easily." Ryan Moore, the golden child. Captain of everything. The boy who could charm a crowd, ace a test, and never spill coffee on a shirt. I was the quiet one, the artist, the girl who read poetry instead of playing basketball. The one who always fell short of the family's perfect standard, my brother's shadow. Our house in Portland, Oregon, was always full of trophies, his trophies. Shiny reminders that my best was never good enough. I remember one afternoon vividly. I was 16, sitting at the kitchen table with my sketchbook open. I'd just been accepted into a small art program, the first thing that truly felt mine. Dad barely looked up from his newspaper. "That's cute," he said. "But it's not a real future, honey. You should learn from your brother. He's already thinking about law school." Ryan grinned, trying to soften the blow. "Hey, Dad's right, Lena. You're talented, but talent doesn't pay the bills." That was the moment I realized. Even when he meant well, he didn't see me either. I held my sketchbook tighter, tracing the pencil lines that suddenly looked childish. My chest burned with quiet humiliation. Later that night, Grandma June found me on the porch. She'd always been the only one who really listened. Her gray eyes shimmered beneath the porch light as she handed me a tiny silver key pendant. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "don't waste your fire trying to fit someone else's mold. This world needs women who open their own doors." I didn't fully understand it then, but I never took that necklace off again. 2 years later, when Ryan left for Harvard and my father called him our pride, I packed a single suitcase. No ceremony, no goodbyes. I left a note on my pillow. "I'll make my own future." The bus station was cold that morning, and my hands trembled as I held Grandma's pendant. But I wasn't scared, not really. For the first time, I was free. New York City didn't welcome me, it tested me. The first year was a blur of noise, cold wind, and empty pockets. I worked 2 part-time jobs, one at a coffee shop that smelled like burnt espresso and regret, and another cleaning offices at night. My sketchbooks sat untouched most days, their pages smudged with dust and dried tears. But even then, I kept Grandma June's pendant close to my heart. Every time I thought about quitting, I'd touch the cool metal and hear her voice in my head. "Open your own doors, Lena." One night, after closing the cafe, I noticed a flyer taped near the trash bins. Graphic design intern wanted, no experience needed. I almost threw it away. But something in me, maybe desperation, maybe courage, told me to try. That's how I met Marian Torres, creative director at a small Manhattan design firm. She was everything I wanted to be, sharp, graceful, unapologetically confident. When she looked at my rough sketches, she didn't laugh. She smiled. "You've got an eye," she said, tapping one of my drawings. "You just need to believe it." Those 5 words changed everything. For months, I worked harder than I'd ever thought possible. Days blurred into nights, teaching myself software, studying design theory, skipping dinners to meet deadlines. Marianne became more than a boss. She was a mentor, a mirror of the woman I could be. The pay was nothing, but the growth was everything. My first small win came when one of my designs, a clean, minimalist logo for a local bakery, went viral online. The bakery's business tripled. Mine started. By the time I turned 25, I'd launched my own freelance brand design studio from a one-room apartment. Clients came slowly at first, small businesses, startups, anyone who'd take a chance on a girl working from her couch. But with every project, my confidence sharpened. 3 years later, I rebranded a mid-sized company that ended up featured in Forbes Small Business. My inbox exploded. That's when the big companies started calling, including one owned by my brother's firm. I didn't respond.
Not yet.
I built my company quietly, under a different name, LM Studio. No family ties, no past labels. Just work that spoke for itself. Meanwhile, Daniel, the charming finance guy I met at a networking gala, seemed like everything I'd ever wanted. He was ambitious, charismatic, endlessly supportive at first. We married 2 years later, and I thought I'd finally found my balance, love and success, hand in hand. But success has a strange way of revealing people. As my company grew, new offices, a team of 10, 6-figure contracts, I noticed how Daniel's smiles faded. Compliments turned into comparisons. "You're getting obsessed with work," he'd say. Ryan never made his wife feel small. Funny how he didn't see the irony. So I stayed quiet. Let him believe I was still figuring things out. I didn't correct him when he told friends I was a freelancer. It was easier to hide my empire than to watch him shrink beside it. But that night, when he laughed, when he said those words, every quiet sacrifice I'd made came crashing back. And I knew it was time. Time to stop hiding. Time to show the world who Lena Moore really was. It happened 3 weeks after Daniel's little joke. I hadn't said a word since that night. Not about his comment. Not about what I was planning. He thought I was being distant. In reality, I was building the moment that would end everything we'd pretended to be. The opportunity came disguised as coincidence, or maybe fate. Ryan's company, Moore & Latham, was struggling with a rebranding crisis. Their previous marketing campaign had flopped spectacularly, costing them millions. Daniel, who handled some of their investment accounts, came home one night talking about it. "They're meeting a few design firms next week," he said, loosening his tie. "Big contract. But honestly, it's out of your league, Lena. You're not corporate enough." I smiled, just enough for him to miss the storm in my eyes. "Maybe," I said softly. "But everyone deserves a chance, don't they?" He laughed again. That same low, patronizing sound that once made me doubt myself. By the next morning, LM Studio had a meeting confirmed with Moore & Latham's board, under my alias, L.M. Rivers, the name I used to keep my identity quiet. When the day arrived, I wore a cream pantsuit that fit like armor. My hair pinned neatly, a touch of crimson lipstick, power in its simplest form. As I walked into the sleek conference room on the 32nd floor, I felt nothing but calm. Daniel and Ryan were already seated at the long glass table. Ryan looked older than I remembered, still handsome, still confident, but a little less certain around the eyes. Daniel turned, his expression shifting from boredom to disbelief. "Lena, what are you doing here?" I set my leather folder on the table and met his gaze evenly. "Presenting our proposal." Ryan frowned. "Wait, you're from LM Studio?" I smiled, slow, deliberate. "I am LM Studio." The silence that followed was delicious. I began my presentation, confident, articulate, every slide sharp enough to cut through years of condescension. I talked about visual storytelling, audience psychology, long-term brand trust. The board members nodded, impressed. Daniel kept glancing at me like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him. Ryan looked stunned, then something softer. Regret, maybe. When I finished, the head of the board leaned forward. Ms. Rivers, or should I say Ms. Moore, your vision is exactly what this company needs. Ryan swallowed hard. Lena, you built all this? I turned to him. The brother, who once told me talent doesn't pay the bills. Yes, I said gently. And it pays them very well. Daniel let out a breathy laugh, the sound of a man grasping at denial. Unbelievable. You were hiding this from me? I faced him fully then, voice calm but steady. I wasn't hiding. You just never looked close enough to see me. The board members excused themselves, giving us space. The room emptied, leaving the three of us in the echo of our own history. Daniel rubbed his forehead. You lied to me, Lena. No, I said softly. I protected my peace. There's a difference. Ryan leaned forward, his tone quieter now. You proved us all wrong. I shook my head. I didn't do it to prove you wrong, Ryan. I did it to prove me right. For a moment, no one spoke. The city glowed beyond the windows, the skyline glittering like applause I didn't need anymore. Daniel finally broke the silence. So what now? I looked at him, the man who once measured my worth in comparisons. You said I'd never be as good as my brother, I said, stepping closer. Then tell him to report to his new boss me. The words hung in the air, sharp and clean, not cruel, just final. Ryan blinked, stunned. Daniel's jaw clenched, speechless. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Not from them, but from the version of me that ever needed their approval. After that meeting, the power in the room had shifted, silently, completely. And everyone knew it. The next morning, Ryan called. His voice was polite, careful, the way people sound when they realize they've misjudged someone. Lena, he said, we'd be honored to have Elm Studio take over the rebrand. For a moment, I just listened to the quiet on the line. 10 years ago, that same voice used to tell me to be realistic. Now it carried respect. And maybe a little guilt. I'll take the project, I said finally, but on my terms. He hesitated. What terms? You'll find out in the meeting. That afternoon, I walked into their office, not as his little sister, not as Daniel's wife, but as Lena Moore, CEO. The energy in the room was different this time. Ryan stood as I entered. Daniel didn't. I began simply. Before we start, I need transparency. This project isn't just about business. It's about rebuilding something much bigger, trust. Ryan nodded, shame flickering behind his eyes. Daniel looked away. I'll lead the campaign, I continued, but I have conditions. I turned to Ryan first. You're brilliant, but you've spent your whole life talking over people, especially women. I want every creative department head for this project to be female. I want young designers who've been overlooked, the ones waiting for a chance. He blinked, surprised. You want all women? I smiled. I want balance. The kind of balance I never had. Then I looked at Daniel. His jaw tightened. As for you, I said, you'll manage the financial reports for Elm Studio during the campaign. He frowned. You're assigning me to you? No, I said softly. I'm giving you the opportunity to learn what partnership actually looks like. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then, quietly, you're serious. Completely. The room fell into silence again. But this time, it wasn't the silence of tension. It was clarity. Ryan finally exhaled. Lena, I'm sorry. I met his gaze, and for once, it wasn't filled with resentment. You don't have to apologize. Just do better. Use your voice to lift others, not silence them. He nodded, his eyes glistening slightly. Daniel stood, adjusting his cufflinks like armor. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I smiled, calm, unshaken. I'm not enjoying it, Daniel. I'm reclaiming it. He looked at me for a long time, like he was seeing a stranger, or maybe the woman he never bothered to know. When the meeting ended, I walked out into the sunlight, my heels clicking against the pavement. The wind was sharp, but it felt good, cleansing. For years, I'd let people decide who I was supposed to be. The quiet sister, the supportive wife, the second-best version of someone else's dream. But that day I set the terms. Not for revenge. For respect. For balance. Because sometimes power isn't about making others small. It's about finally taking up the space you were always meant to fill. 3 months later, the campaign launched, and it was a masterpiece. Billboards lit up across New York City, bold and elegant, each carrying the same message. Redefine your legacy. It wasn't just about Moore and Latham, it was about me. About every woman who'd ever been told she wasn't enough. The campaign went viral within days. Profits soared. Ryan called almost every evening to share updates, his tone no longer proud, just grateful. He started asking questions, really listening. He even hired 2 of my young designers permanently. One night, he said quietly, "You were right, Lena. I didn't listen, but I'm trying now." And for the first time in years, I believed him. Daniel took longer. Pride dies slowly. He handled the financial reports without complaint, but the silence between us was thick, the kind that says everything words can't. Then one evening, as I was leaving the office, I found him waiting outside. He looked tired, not angry, just human. "You've built something incredible," he said. "I didn't see it before. Maybe I didn't want to." I didn't say anything. The city hummed around us, horns, footsteps, life. "I'm working on myself," he added. "Not to win you back, just to understand what I broke." I nodded. That's a good start. We didn't reconcile that night. But we didn't fight either. Sometimes, peace isn't a return, it's a release. That weekend, I visited Grandma June's old house. The garden was overgrown now, wild with lavender and wind chimes. I sat on the porch steps where she'd once handed me that silver key pendant. It still hung around my neck, a little tarnished but strong like me. I thought about the girl who'd left home with nothing but a suitcase and a stubborn dream. About the woman who learned to open her own doors. Ryan had changed. Daniel was trying. But I realized none of that defined my closure. The real closure was this. I no longer needed to prove my worth to anyone. I smiled, running my thumb over the key's smooth surface. The breeze lifted my hair, warm and soft. Grandma's words echoed again. Open your own doors. And maybe, finally, I understood what she meant. Because I hadn't just opened a door. I'd built the whole house.